So morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're zooming in from. It's with great pleasure that I introduce you to our first panel. We thought we'd kickstart this jam-packed day with a conversation about the future of connectivity. So we all know connectivity has been essential, to say the least, to our lives in the wake of COVID. But the future of connectivity is being shaped by, as Stacey mentioned, DeWi, Decentralized, Wi-Fi, and Edge. If you don't know what these terms mean, you're about to find out and discover why they're so key to our connected futures. So Stacey, I was going to introduce you, but you've already wonderfully introduced yourself. I'm going to hand the reins over to you and intro your panel.
Excellent. Thanks, Irene. Okay, well, it's so overwhelming. There are so many people here. Before we get into the panel, I just want to give everyone, if you don't have it, just an update on why we're even talking about this, because you might be sitting here going, decentralized wireless, decentralized computing, does it really matter? And the answer is yes, because if we are going to envision a world with 1 trillion sensors, or even 100 billion sensors, we can't actually manage that on our own by ourselves. You can't treat those like a 1-to-1 ratio. So broadly, I want y'all to think we're going to be talking about computing, networking, less storage, but it is important. So the trifecta of how computers work, we're going to be having to split that apart. It has historically lived in a box. Initially, it was a box under your desk and you took care of it and you snuggled it and cuddled it like a pet. And then we had enterprise IoT, client server, and then the cloud. And then those pets became managed like a herd of cattle. You hear this a lot in the computing space. They're like, you cannot afford to manage your computing like a pet. You've got to manage it like cattle. What's happening is you're going to have to manage your computing like a grove of trees around the world, because you're not even going to be able to have it in one space. And that requires a lot of thinking about different architectures. And we're going to be talking about that. But it also, the networking side, the communication side, we've historically had a similar mindset, except with communication, it's expensive. So if you think about having an expensive pet, that's a cell tower, and having to spend money to put that up and have that everywhere. And the results of that are, to make money as a carrier, you had to charge people a lot of money because you're managing this whole expensive infrastructure. DeWi changes that. And I don't know if I can call it DeWi with a straight face. So decentralized wireless changes that. And we're going to have Micha introduce himself and talk about what he's doing there and a little bit why. But the big picture is it changes the economics. So Micha, you start.
Thank you, Stacey, for an amazing introduction. Great to meet you all. Super happy to be here on this panel with you and Fay to talk about decentralized wireless, edge, and the future of connectivity. So I'm a co-founder of a company called Nodle, and our vision is really to connect the next trillion things. And we have a very innovative approach on how to do that. We basically push a software and more specifically an app on millions of smartphones that are turned into a micro base station or hotspot for IoT devices and sensors, if you want. And the main innovation is actually that we bundle together the connectivity layer with the payment layer. So we have a decentralized architecture involving a blockchain and our own cryptocurrency. And when people have the Nodle Cash app on their phone, for example, they get paid for participating in the network and building this giant global network everywhere on the planet. We reach more than 100 countries today. You can install the app. It's pretty easy. You just need to go to basically to your app store or Play Store and download the app. It takes just a few minutes and you create an account. It's done automatically. We don't need to know anything about you. Privacy is actually key in building this infrastructure and the future of connectivity. And that's it. And we believe that's just the first layer. And when it comes to actually building this decentralized architecture, I think it goes beyond connectivity. Connectivity is really just the first layer. What's the most important and what I think is the most disrupting and what we're going to see in the future is how this mobile platform is actually enabling everyone to monetize their creation. And I think that's where also Fay is going to come into play with microservices and Edge. So I'm super excited to talk about all these things today.
Yes, and we started with you because you're at the beginning of the panel, Micha, and you've actually got a model that's working. I've been running Nodle on my phone for 2 years, a really long time, 3 years? I don't even know. It's so long. So Fay, why don't you come up and tell us about what you're doing? I think of y'all as like the computing architecture for this decentralized IoT world. And we'll talk about what you're doing. And then we'll talk about how you're incentivizing people. So, or how you're thinking the revenue models will work. So Fay?
Sure. Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me. Stacey, Micha, and Linkit for inviting me. We're heading toward all things digital. And by the way, I'm Fay Arjomandi. I'm founder and CEO of Mimik. What's happening right now is that we're transitioning from mobile internet to hyper-connected world. So basically, mobile internet was about mobile connect to internet and consume content. Hyper-connected world means digital intersect with every aspect of our physical life, physical world. And when we talk about all things digital, it's not about just things as in connected device, but it's about every processing, every task that we do in physical world is basically creates a digital aspect. It needs a digital aspect. People have heard about digital twin, which means that you're basically creating a digital equivalent of a task, a service that happens in the physical world. So in that world, what is happening, and the reason this thing is happening is because we have more and more connected devices, all things connected. And that's through all kind of different connectivity, from Bluetooth to Wi-Fi to Zigbee to cellular, and though let's not forget still Ethernet. And I'm sure other things are gonna come even more. And then you have compute everywhere. The iPhone X13 that I have in my hands has 6-core CPU. The MacBook that I am using to dial with Zoom, and I bought it 2 years ago, has quad-core CPU. So my laptop has 8 GB of RAM. My phone starts with 128 GB of RAM. So the world around us, with the devices that are coming around us, they all have connectivity and they all have compute. And when you look at that, every processing is going to be digital. Then you put the two together, that what are the solutions of futures need to do? And that means that they need to mimic the physical experience in the digital world. So how do we use this massive amount of compute and decentralized connectivity to enable application developers, to enable the solution providers to take the raw data, because now data is on device, it starts from device, and that the raw data need to turn into inference, and the global inference need to turn into knowledge. So how do we enable the faster time to processing raw data, to inference, and then to knowledge, which means that you need to have the sense of reality. So that's what Mimik is providing. And it's saying that, okay, in the world of hyper-connected world, you can't just continuously send data to the cloud as we know it. So we reimagine how cloud of future is gonna work. And that is when you look at cloud computing, which is about hardware resource, CPU resource, compute resource, that you now host your application there. Now we bring that capability to host your application need right from the device where the data source starts. And that's what hybrid edge cloud computing is all about. We provided runtime engine for solution developers, that they can now bring the capability of hosting their solutions in the back end in cloud to now process it on device. In a sense, we enable the capability of developing, deploying your digital twin, whether it's a digital twin about an IoT, or whether it's a digital twin about an AI pretty much engine that works for on my behalf. So you be enabling that development and delivery of digital twin on any device, on any operating system, across any network, and at the end of the day to any cloud. So that's what the continuum computing or hybrid edge cloud computing is all about, which Mimik is providing, that it's completely horizontal. It doesn't require network effect. So Mimik is not in the business of, hey, Stacey, put your compute in the network and then let everybody use it. That is an application logic that can be developed on top of Mimik and promote that compute sharing. But that's just one application of it. There are millions of other applications that some of them we know it today, and some of them it's unfolding right before our eyes. That's what Mimik is providing, a hybrid edge cloud platform that you can develop your edge cloud native solutions from scratch, that is cheaper cheaper because you don't constantly go to cloud. It provides more data privacy because you can process data on the same device and extract knowledge from it. It increased security, and it's a lot more energy efficient. So I'm going to pause.
Okay. I was like, Fay, you're running into my next questions. Okay. So just to recap a little bit, because there was a lot there. If I am an application developer, I am going to use your platform to build, not just on a single computer or a single cloud, I'm going to use it to build my application to run on hundreds of thousands of devices. Yes. Okay. So yes. Let's talk. Oh, okay. That's simple. Let's talk about incentives here, because what is the business model associated with what you're doing? And then we'll talk to Micha about how he built an incentive program that worked. And we should probably talk a little bit about why that matters. But go ahead. What is the incentive to use this in the business models that can be developed?
Absolutely. So the incentive, again, we're targeting enterprise, we're targeting traditional solution developers, and we're enabling a lot of different startups. Actually, under Mimik, there are 6 startup portfolio companies today that we're also helping them to develop from scratch, while we have enterprises and while we have partnership with likes of IBM and Amazon. So the incentive is that, hey, you developing your application today, you develop monolith in the front end and cloud in the back end. Every time you click on a function, majority of time, the data need to travel out of the device, go to cloud and come back. Now, depending on the sector, whether you're a IoT company, the majority of IoT applications have been failing due to the cost of cloud and latency. And another thing that calls data avalanche effect, because sensors are sending data in a dumb way and somebody in the backend need to collect them and drive insight. Now with Mimik, you don't need to constantly send data out. You can process it on device. You can extract knowledge. And now you can decide based on that knowledge, do I need to inform another robot arm to take an action? Do I need to inform the CFO office because the device is about to go down and it creates liability and insurance? Do I need to dispatch a workforce management that can now dispatch someone to come and fix me as a robot arm? So it depends on the business logic. The incentive is that I have a lower cost as an enterprise. I have ability to iterate my solution faster because the digital world is unfolding before our eyes. We can't look at the future of digital world with the look of the past and try to repeat the past. We're recreating the future. So now if my need evolves, I need to interact with another system. I can do it because I'm following the standard macro service and RESTful API. My cost of operation is going to be lower. My time to market is going to be faster. I am aligned with Data Privacy Act because I'm not sending data constantly out. I can scale much faster, and my overall risk of operation is going down because I now have a platform that goes across everything. It doesn't bring anything proprietary. Actually, one of our biggest differentiation is that we're standard. We're kind of allowing you to continue your standard application development with a standard microservice, with a standard application language. So there is the incentive is in the cost of operation and time to market and ability to innovate fast and iterate.
Yes. Yes. So this is something you would look for. Like, this is when I look for companies that are going to succeed going forward, I look for companies that have this sort of mindset and platform, which is always being able to develop. They have a very, I used to call it a cloud-based mindset, but I'm now looking at it to be a decentralized mindset because of the issues of latency, privacy, faster ability to do something with that data. So that's a good thing to look for going forward. Now, Micha, your incentives are very different because you're trying to recruit people to participate in the Nodle network. And what have you learned in building out your platform from that?
So I've learned a lot from, many experiences in the space of mobile and building decentralized solution. In the past, and as a few of you know, basically I built an app which was doing messaging in a decentralized manner called Fire Chat, and enabling actually messages to be able not only to go through the cloud, but also to travel from phone to phone. It was pretty successful. And actually that's where I understood that what we were building in terms of architecture and the solutions at the edge and the decentralized system we had built basically was going to be enabling things beyond just messaging. So we applied these first principles with Nodle to actually connect to sensors. And there's a very simple use case. And if you like, for example, the Apple AirTag, I guess some of you have one. They use a kind of a similar architecture. So we started by providing that service with Nodle for industrial applications to locate items that usually cannot be located or are pretty cheap, so that don't cost much, like shipping pallets. It can go on mail, it can go on packages. And this crowd of people with our app now are the ones enabling to connect to these tags and to locate them. And so how do you maintain that network? So we had to create an incentivization layer. And for that, we created what we call a proof of work, which is called proof of connectivity. And so people generate a cryptocurrency for participating and maintaining that network. And when you have the app running, we process payments every 6 seconds and you start to be paid for maintaining your node. And that's just really the basic first layer. But once you want to actually decentralize these services, push these services at the edge, like explained earlier, then you have to change the whole economics of how we usually connect, and actually the whole economic of how even telco are operating today, or how big companies in the cloud are operating today. All that needs to be disrupted. What few people know, but the capabilities of your smartphones are beyond even the computing capability. You have all sorts of radios in your phone, and in the future, I don't know if it's going to take 5 or 10 more years, but you will be able to use your cellular radio to connect to other phones around you and exchange gigabytes of information. So that information won't even touch the cloud. It won't go through a telco. It will go, maybe we'll use some assets of the telco, like the spectrum of the telco, but it will go from one phone to another. And we are, I think, at the beginning of this disruption. And so that's why the incentivization is so important, because you're going to have participants in this ecosystem which are involving people like you and me. And instead of, for example, creating content like I do every day when I take a photo and I post it on social, or if I do a video and I share it with my friends or on social with the public, instead of that money actually going to companies who owns these centralized services and this centralized platform, you will be the one who actually is going to benefit most of the revenue that content can generate. And that's why this incentivization layer is so important. And that's why attaching to the connectivity layer, actually the payment layer is so key. So in our world, for example, we have people participating. It's a multi-sided marketplace. We have businesses who want to access the services. They need to pay in our cryptocurrency to be able to benefit from that crowd and swarm of people with their smartphones to connect their things. And in the middle, you have the app developers. So we started by building the first mobile application, the first app on Nodle, just to show app developers what can be built. And we did that with actually a service which is comparable to what Apple is doing with the Apple AirTag to locate their Apple AirTag. But these app developers tomorrow are going to be the one powering that ecosystem and building on top of the connectivity layer all sorts of applications. And that's when basically things could become very interesting. And that's why cryptocurrency is so important, because you can then split the revenue between the people building the platform, the app developers creating the service, and then enterprise and businesses who want to benefit from this service basically are the one injecting the fuel and money to basically benefit from this new type of platform. And that's completely key. And I think it's going to disrupt so many of what we know today and how we use actually mobile today. The mobile platform is becoming almost a mix of a studio and a major at the same time for every individual. And people don't realize, but it's going to be a huge change what's going to happen in the next 10 years. We are just at the beginning of this disruption.
Absolutely. We actually, that's a very important things to mention, that we're just at the beginning of this revolution. And that's it. And I think when we look at mobile internet, it's kind of disintermediated the physical middleman and replaced them with a digital middleman. What decentralization is doing, and it's very essential, both in terms of social political element and also in terms of financial and solution development element, is that it eliminates the digital middleman. It allows a smart contract between the consumer and producer, and the role of consumer and producer, depending on context, is constantly changing. And to give you an example of digital middleman, and again, this is not to bash any company, but when you're using an application, that your healthcare application, an application that is about fintech application, you basically you don't know as a consumer how many digital middlemen, how many third-party aggregators are between you and your data and the final destination. I'll give you one example in a fintech world. There are a lot of API aggregators out there. One of the API aggregators, for example, is Plaid, that every time you make a payment through your application, an application can use the API. It goes to cloud as a third-party aggregator. The third-party aggregator Plaid is sending an information to bank backend. The backend come back, tell Plaid something, and the response come back to the device. But your bank application is on the same device as the other healthcare application. So when you want to make a payment, it just makes sense to make a certain API call with the same authorization and authentication between the two apps on the same device. So you create an edge native mashup on the same device. So when Micha is saying this is the beginning of that revolution, and your mobile device is like a studio, the mobile device, think about the SaaS world in the cloud, this notion of solution as a service, that we just make an API call to them and we pay for it. That can potentially have a presence on the same device. So you no longer have, in a sense, an app. You have these systems as a service on the same device that can interact with each other using a standard RESTful API. Then a device with another device can interact with each other, again, using a standard RESTful API, and then the device can talk to cloud. So everything comes to the picture. But the key thing is that for the users of that digital solution, you're democratizing, you're allowing this cross-platform, cross-OS, cross-network, because that's an essential part of those interactions.
So that is an excellent point and a great example, very concrete. I loved it. Digital middlemen do not want to be disintermediated, right? They work really hard to avoid getting out of the middle. It's wonderful there. They get fees for just standing there and transferring things. It's lovely. So what are some of the roadblocks ahead? We've talked about, the roadblock to incentivize normal people to participate. You've built a platform that allows you to build an application easily that can run on many computers. So those are two roadblocks that feel like, oh, we've taken those out of the picture. That's what y'all are doing. What else do we need to think about? I can think of security. So Fay, you're taking in your breath, but I'm going to give it over to Micha just for a second, just to give us some variety.
Yeah, security is actually a very important element, key element, especially when I heard a lot the word hyper-connected world. Yes, in this hyper-connected world where you're going to have not tens of billions, but actually trillions of things connected, you need security. But security needs also to be simple to implement, otherwise basically it never gets done. And especially when it comes to IoT and the space of IoT, it's a key element. I always like to make this comparison with a famous sentence from a book called Trillions that actually depict very well this future, where we're going to have more microprocessors or wireless interface around us than we have bolts and nuts. And that's really the world we are entering in. And when you have that world, if you don't want to be basically living a nightmare and a complete dystopian world, you need a lot of security and you need systems that actually protect people's privacy. And that's what we actually focus and put a lot of energy in everything we built with my team at Nodle. Is we try to make systems that are very simple to use, but with privacy and security at the core. And we have done some amazing work there, and I can give you some examples in the space of IoT when these smartphones basically are used like nodes to connect to sensors or to a device. We built a system that enables to authenticate that device remotely, verify it is actually the device it claims to be. We have built the equivalent of web certificates, so like the equivalent of HTTPS for IoT devices. So any manufacturer can actually connect their device using a secure certificate and encrypting the data being broadcasted or transmitted from these devices. And yeah, security is something that needs to be taken very, very seriously, especially when you know that everything that gets out of a factory or gets manufactured, we have some sort of wireless identity, whether they need to connect or not from time to time or all the time to the internet. Yeah, it's key.
And Fay, what other roadblocks are there?
So today we have enterprise customers. Actually, I mean, today if you go to some of the App Store of Android or iOS, you can download applications that developed with Mimik. And when this is a wellness application or fintech application that then you download it, you don't even know as a consumer that now you have microservices running there or you have data actually processing there. So the platform is being used, and on the IoT side, we have this Edge SDK that sits on FreeRTOS sensor, which means that FreeRTOS sensor can now discover an application on an iPhone and receive information back. And it's the platform that we build is built based on security first approach and all the standard security, from encryption to authorization to authentication, all that taken into consideration. And the key thing around data privacy, actually, that's a very important one for both for consumer and enterprises. We strongly believe that data belongs to the data producers. And we strongly believe that data is a currency of future. It's almost like the future currency is going to be based on my data and the value of insight. And that is something that actually never diminish the value. I call ourselves are like walking mine with infinite resource. You know, it's because the more insight I have over time, the more valuable that data is. And in a sense, I have to be able to pass that value as an inheritance to whoever I want after me. So, and hybrid edge is the only way to actually bring that data privacy to the picture and that data ownership to the picture, because now I give control of data to the producer of data, and they can decide who they want to share it with and for what type of a monetary value. So one of the things that actually we're undertaking is about how to bring data as a financial asset and bring value to it. So imagine the same way that I have my MasterCard and Visa on my electronic wallet on my phone, I could have my healthcare data card. I could have my fitness data card. And when I go to a place, when I go to see my doctor, or when I go to see my fitness instructor, or when I go to see my financial advisor, I can expose and I can give them the permission to view it at that time. I can decide how much of that information I want them to see. I can decide which piece they can copy, and I can put a monetary value on that. So that's where, again, the DeWi and the hybrid edge cloud, in fact, it brings those elements. And these are the only practical and economical way that we can achieve those kind of visions.
I'm worried that I'll end up getting my data. It will be like, oh, your data is only worth 10 cents. Good luck. And I'm like, oh, man. Okay, we are going to open it up to Q&A. And I believe there is a Q&A. Yes, there is a Q&A option. So if you have questions about this panel, not the conference agenda or the trip to Lisbon, which does sound really cool, you guys, do let us know. And in the meantime, we'll keep going.
Can I have a question?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Kareem.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, so as we were doing the polls, I mean, look, Fay, Micha, and Stacey, this is a very difficult topic to grasp and understand. It will take a little bit of time, but help me understand a little bit about how what you do today is going to affect the rest of us in the next 12 months, or in the next 12 to 24 months. Because if we look at some of the things that are being decentralized, we look at the digital asset environment that's going on, and you know, the self-sovereign identity issue comes up, but compress this for me a little bit and help me understand with an example of what we all need to pay attention to within the next 24 months that we're going to see a seismic shift in.
Do you want me to answer? Like, I feel like I use these things as a normal person.
That'd be great.
Okay, because I agree with you. This is a lot, and it takes a lot of brain power. So on Misha's stance for Nodle, for, like I said, I've had the app for 2 years. It has not run continuously for me, but the benefit to me is, as a host, I am able. I've earned a set amount of Nodle cash. I don't know how much it is. I'm sorry, Misha, I haven't tracked it. But what that enables is a cheaper and more open way for companies to track assets. And what you're seeing is, as a consumer or as an enterprise, you used to have to pay a carrier or a satellite provider a lot of money. You used to have to pay, you know, for every tag that you put on something, you paid for the tag, and then you paid a service fee for that tag or that cluster of tags. What you can do with the decentralized wireless network is you can just do the same sort of business model, except you'll work with someone like Nodle or Helium or any of the other decentralized providers out there, and you will pay less. So one, it turns things cheaper. But two, you could also host your own node, generate your own coins or whatever crypto you're using, and then offset the cost by sharing the network. So you should, like, it's a benefit because it makes things cheaper to run and operate, and you can also participate in it if you want. Like, and then for Fay's thing, what I see businesses trying to do is less about turning people's data into cash and more about enterprises trying to run these things at the edge and keeping their data private, which is the most important part right now. So they're doing it to keep their secrets secret. And eventually you talk to people and they'll be like, they'll do something like a digital twin, which is a digital replica of a machine. And maybe they'll do like a digital twin of an office. And in that case, what can happen with this sort of decentralized model is, if I'm the tenant in the office, I might provide some extra data to my landlord in exchange for a cut of, like, a discount on my rent is an option. Or you might use that data to share with your utility for a discount on the utility or things like that. So I don't know if that helps, like, drive it to concrete levels. Go ahead.
If I may add a few things to what Stacey said, Kareem, this is a confusing time because for the first time in our lives, a lot of technology trends are converging at the same time, which means AI, smart mobility, blockchain, and smart robotics, right? These are the four things that kind of converging at the same time. Technology is going to be embedded in everything. The confusion is the fact that people got used to application, vertical. When you have connectivity everywhere, where you have compute everywhere, and where you have convergence of all these trends coming together, you can't think application anymore. The first thing that it happens is that, you know, every hardware is going to have a process, a software process, a digital twin that is responsible for running a task. Now, these digital twins need to communicate with each other in order to drive to a full automated world that runs based on AI. Now, the problem and the confusion is that everything has been being bundled together. And when we talk about these things, we're kind of used to talking in the vertical integrated world, where we have to actually start decoupling things and look at different companies from the eyes of the layer. Where is that fit? Is the company fit in hyperconnectivity world? They're providing a new form of connectivity. They're providing a new form of discovery of connectivity. Is the company fit into bringing computation together or enabling utilization? And I want to make that very clear. With Mimik, we're about to utilize the power of device that data is the data source as a first compute, as a first cloud. That's the thing that we're providing, because now you can take action much faster. Now, the third layer of this story is the actual data. And the data, whenever you talk about data, you have to look at three layers of data: raw data, inference data, knowledge. And when we look at raw data, that's raw data, that's something produced. The inference can be based on, hey, things are on the same device. If my raw data says the temperature is 70 Fahrenheit, is that 70 Fahrenheit about the device itself? Is that 70 Fahrenheit is about Fay? Body temperature, is that 70 Fahrenheit is about the proximity environment outside? Then you look at
I'm Fay, this is very, very valuable, but we are getting close to that time. I want Micha
yeah, sure.
So give me an idea, or give us an idea of the industry that's going to be affected the most in these convergence of technologies that's happening today.
I think I want to give you just an idea of what's happening on the crypto sides of things, because I think it's going to affect a lot of the economy and then affect all of us. Today, you have probably a bit more than 100 million crypto wallets out there. We started the year with probably 60, 70 million. I think in a year from now, it's going to be 1 billion. You have 6 billion smartphones out there. It means that you're going to have almost 20% of everyone with a smartphone. I mean, between 15 and 20% of people who will start to have actually a crypto wallet, and they will become acquainted with cryptocurrencies. And that's going to change the future of everyone. And the companies, to come back to your question, that are going to be affected by this decentralization of finance are going to be all the large companies who basically are major central platforms that we are forced to use on an everyday basis. And I think these are the ones who will have to reinvent themselves if they want to basically be part of this new decentralized economy. And call it Web3, decentralized economy. I think the topic of today was around decentralized wireless, because I think it's one of the first layers that nobody would expect that it would become decentralized at some point, because we are so used to always use connectivity from one single provider. But even these providers are thinking today on how they're going to build the architecture of tomorrow in a decentralized manner, how everyone is going to help them build that infrastructure. When it comes just to 5G, for example, I mean, the number of base stations that you need to deliver the promise of more bandwidth and more throughput, it means also multiplying the number of base stations, and it means shorter distance from the device to the base station, from a smartphone to the base station. And to maintain this and to build it, I mean, it's not going to be just one central organization being able to build that. They're going to have to rely on enterprise who can be part of it. They're going to have to rely on people to be part of it. And I think that's one of the big disruption also, is people are going to be more and more part of all these services. And in addition, they're going to benefit from the revenues that are generated on that infrastructure. And I think that's the major difference. And our goal, for example, with Nodle, our first mission, we would love when we arrive to the point where actually what the money you generate through the Nodle Cash App or the missions that you will be able to do through the Nodle Cash App pay at least for your mobile data plan. And I think we are not far from there. We are just a couple of years there.
So this is pretty amazing. You heard it here first. Did you say 1 billion wallets?
No. I was saying that's the market in general.
All right.
We're going to get there soon, yeah.
All right, Micha, Fay, thank you so much. Stacey, it was a wonderful panel here. As we said, we'd like to see you, and we're going to host some more of these events. It's a very deep topic and very, it's on the edge, and we have to learn a little bit more. Thank you.